This is Rostra, the St. Theodore Guerin Junior Classical League podcast, where we bring the lessons of classical study into the light for the benefit of all. Well, welcome back to another episode of Rostra. We're fortunate today. We've got Wesley Street. He's a junior in second year Latin. And what can I say? It's a topic that affects everybody, whether or not you actually ever go through this event. It affects everybody. So, Wesley, what is your topic?
My topic is on Roman weddings.
Roman weddings, and yeah, every culture has some form of weddings. It's just part of different cultures. Of course, as Christians, we see that as a holy thing, and so it's very much connected with our faith. What did that look like for Romans? Was there a religious aspect to it? What was it for them?
Well, Romans heavily influenced weddings today, so they're very similar. Lots of the times they were religious, and some of the same traits like that we have in weddings today go back to then. For example, the bride always wore white, and there was an engagement ring as well. So there's lots of similarities and differences.
Some similarities. Now, one thing I want to throw in there that's different about the bride is her veil. I don't know if you found that in your research or not, but the bride's veil itself was often orange color,
right?
Yellow? And it gets yellow, orange, orangish red. The idea was it indicated flame, because the bride or the wife then would be the one who would keep the fire burning in the house, not only to warm the house, but also to cook the food and so forth. She was in charge of that fire. And so that was a little different. But yeah, she had a special dress. There was a ring. So very similar to things that you would see today. What else, either similar or different, that you ran across?
Well, today there's a lot of divorce in marriage, and back then it was not very common at all to divorce. It was very avoided.
It was avoided, and I don't know if you ran across, there was kind of a mechanism that they put in place to prevent that. Did you find anything about the dowry? Was that something that you ran across?
Was there something involved with like death?
No, it's not so much death as the bride's father would give something of value. Could be money, could be land, could be animals, something of value to the groom. Okay? That was the bride's dowry. But here's the thing. If he divorced her, he had to pay her daddy back. Mm-hmm. And so it was a way, kind of a built-in mechanism to protect against divorce, right? Because the guy spends the money, has used the animals or whatever, doesn't have it to pay back, guess what? They're not getting a divorce. So it was a way to protect against. So you're absolutely right about that. Yeah, so what else did you find?
Some differences, or
either way, you whichever direction you want to take it.
Hold on one sec. I found about the bride again. So she was tied with like double knotted around the waist, and only the husband could untie that knot. And she also had a belt called the zona.
Yes.
That represents virginity.
Yes. In fact, that word zona, good first declension Latin noun, actually comes up in a poem by the Roman poet Catullus that we read in one of the upper levels, either third year or fourth year. We usually touch on that poem. So good. Did you find anything in terms of the wedding ceremonies themselves? Any particular details that you ran across?
I saw that they said there was like a banquet before the wedding. I read about.
And show me the culture that doesn't involve food in the important events of life, right? I mean, whether it's birthdays, weddings, funerals, right? You think about bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, all these things. We have food, and so the Romans exactly like us in that regard. So what else did you have?
So They would generally take place in June to more or less show respects to the god Juno.
And why would that be? Why would they be focusing on Juno in particular? Because they had multiple gods,
Right.
multiple goddesses.
Well, he's the god of weddings. Right?
She's the goddess of weddings, exactly right. And so Juno, June, right, month name for her, so that makes complete sense. Yeah.
And also, they would never take place on, like, quote-unquote, unlucky days, is what it said.
The Romans were incredibly superstitious. And, you know, I think for us, we maybe have one unlucky day, Friday the 13th. If that ever pops up, people start to, you know, kind of freak out a little bit. But the Romans, there were various days in the calendar that they were considered unlucky. You don't want to do anything important, like getting married on that day, because maybe, you know, it'll go badly, the gods will curse you or something like that. So they watched out for that kind of stuff. Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a couple of things we want to touch on here, but anything particular that you ran across in your research that you're going, you know what, I want to make sure that people know this. If they're listening to this podcast, is there anything else that's particularly either interesting or odd or whatever that you think people really have to know?
Back to what I said earlier on, like, how divorce, like today, divorce is it like 50% or something like that?
You know, the percentage is high. I don't know what it is at the moment, but yes.
It's how was such like a big deal back then to get a divorce. And I feel like today, people, when they marry, it's kind of more in the discussion, more or less.
You know, it's less difficult. Certainly, culturally, it's less difficult to get a divorce than in those times. So you had a lot more pressure, perhaps, to stay married there. So, you know, there was different types of weddings, obviously, as there are now. You know, more expensive and elaborate ones, and things that were a little bit less so. I was curious if you ran across anything about wedding vows. Did you find anything about what either the bride or the groom might have actually said?
I don't think so.
So it's something that we sometimes talk about, and in one of our years, and I forget which year we usually talk about this, but the groom really didn't have much to say. It was the bride who had something to say. And it was a really set phrase. She would say, ubi tu Gaius ego Gaia. And Gaius and Gaia were just generic male and female names, kind of like John and Jane or something like that today. And it meant wherever you, Gaius, go, I, Gaia, will follow. That's what she said. Guy really didn't have to say anything. So it was, but you know, again, we have vows today, right? A lot of times couples will write their vows, certainly incorporated into the wedding ceremony there. So yeah, interesting stuff. So, but before we close out, is there anything else that you found in your research that you think we want to make sure we touch on?
Not really, but the reason why I chose this topic was just to kind of compare weddings today, the similarities and differences to ancient Roman weddings.
I appreciate you said that, and usually we start off with that question. I usually ask a guest, why did you pick that topic? You touched on something there that I'm going to pitch this out to you, but I think also anybody who listens to the podcast. There's so many neat topics that you encounter in high school that you can, if you're interested in them, hang on to that thought. You might have a paper topic if you go to college. There would be a neat research paper, or maybe if you're whether some history class or some sociology class, looking at, say, wedding ceremonies throughout the world or across time, looking at different cultures, different time periods. It's fascinating to see what's similar and what's different. Yep. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, Wesley, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And we hope to have you again sometime. Thank you for listening to Rostra. You may check out all our episodes on Spotify and follow us on social media at GarinJCL. That's at GuerinJCL.